The 135mm lens. It's a well-loved classic focal length for portrait photographers and fans of creamy, dreamy, blurry backgrounds. The Canon EF 135mm f2 lens in particular is legendary for these features, but it still commands a price tag of over $500 on the used market. But what if I were to tell you that there still exists a 135mm lens that features excellent sharpness and all that dreamy blurriness your artsy heart has ever desired? I went into this lens review thinking that it's going to be a slam dunk of negativity. But to be fair, I found this lens at an antique shop for perhaps $10, tried it once briefly, and relegated it to my shelves. I honestly rarely use any lens at the 135mm focal length. When not being used for portrait photography, the telephoto aspects can make photo composition a bit tricky, especially for someone like me who tends to enjoy wide, expansive places, big landscapes, and whatnot. Moreover, this lens was very well used by previous owners, so my headspace going into testing this lens that it would be janky, clunky, and low quality all around. But the outcome was unexpected and shocking. I'm shocked. Shocked, I tell you. Shocked! From the M42 lens website, this 135mm lens has a max aperture of 2.8 and a minimum of 22. It weighs 468 grams or just over 1 pound for the imperious American pig dogs out there. My version has a built-in lens hood that is both not particularly functional, nor does it really stay in place, which leads to a metallic rattle when I'm walking around with it. The focus ring has a very long throw, so it can take a while to twist it from a close-up shot of something to focusing on infinity for something further away. So, it could lead to carpal tunnel syndrome with heavy usage, or at the very least a much better ability to open jars. The minimum focus distance is 1.5 meters or just under 5 feet, so it almost but not quite succeeds in proper social distancing from your subject. My lens also has a bit of slippage on the focus ring due to being well used. But outside of this issue, the focus was precisely what led to me being shocked while testing the lens. The first portion of this lens test was an industrial district of Tucson with the intention of capturing some city details. As mentioned before, the 135mm focal length has enough telephoto to it that you're going to be coming in tight with some of your compositions. My intention was to find some interesting urban details to capture. But on the first photo, something surprising happened while I focused on the subject. Actual sharpness. I generally expected the lens to have soft focus even at f8, but as I gently dialed the focus ring in, the image sharpness jumped out. This lens was going to produce usable images. I nearly fainted, but that very well could have been due to the desert heat of the day. As I wandered around the area, I tested at f8 and down to 2.8. f8 demonstrates a fairly good edge-to-edge sharpness, while the wide-open f-stops provided all that blurry artsiness that photographers aspire to achieve. Well, some photographers. Your mileage may vary on that point. Contrasts were quite nice and the color capture was excellent. Within a few minutes, I came to realize that this lens was much better than anticipated. Well, that was certainly a little surprise compared to what I was expecting for that lens. So that little walk around the block actually was a better shooting experience than I expected with this lens. I had it in my mind that it was going to be very difficult for the focus to be very good. However, it seemed to be doing really well, so I'm looking forward to getting home and checking out the images on my computer to see for sure. Anyhow, the next test is go off to the Desert Museum, wander around, take pictures of flowers and nature and birds and whatever else I can find and see how this lens does. My next stop with the lens was the Arizona-Sonora Desert Museum, one of Tucson's premier attractions. It is essentially easy mode for wildlife and nature photography, plus it's a great place to learn all about the unique ecosystem of the region. I have a membership to the museum and take advantage of it whenever possible. I figured this would be a good spot to test the lens in a variety of situations. In instances of shooting wide open, I was pleasantly surprised to find that I could still dial in a fairly sharp focus. As I'll mention over in these review videos, modern lenses will still be much sharper, so the vintage lenses need to be viewed in a different perspective. In the context of old manual focus lenses, this one is particularly capable of sharp images with an excellent ability to fine-tune the focus with the extra long focus throw. But, most importantly, the lens does a fine job of creating that dreamy, blurry background behind the photo subject. It also has some occasional peculiar bokeh effects that may appeal to the fans of this sort of thing. But without fail, I was very pleased with the images with the lens wide open. It also did a solid job of photographing flowers and cactus. While the minimum focus distance meant I couldn't get extra close to the subject, the telephoto still allowed me to capture detail. Granted, it does help to have a camera with a bucket load of megapixels so I can crop down. Although I generally prefer focal lengths of 300 to 500 millimeters for wildlife, this lens still has enough reach to get some reasonably good wildlife shots, including this bear thinking about bear stuff, judgmental lizards, and the goofy bighorn sheep. I found the lens to be slightly difficult to photograph birds, as the focus process can be a bit slow and birds are the worst models in the world. In lieu of portrait photography with a human, I chose to test this lens on some metal masks and sculptures. I have zero doubt that this would work great for portraits. For landscape photography, this lens probably wouldn't be one I reach for very often, but it does have occasional uses, such as compressing the subject of the image closer to the distant backgrounds. Focal lengths like this do make it tougher to pull off the thing in foreground counterpoint to the neat thing in far background composition of landscape photography. So in summary, here are the pros of this lens. It is unexpectedly sharp. Given that Albinar is a no-name rando cheap brand from back in the day, I had no real expectations that this lens could produce sharp images, but my tests prove over and over that it is very capable. It has classic 135mm creamy, dreamy, blurred backgrounds. This is probably the main appeal of a lens like this, and it succeeds in creating that vibe. It has good contrast and color capture, and it's a bargain price for premium results. The cons. The long focus throw doesn't make it slow to switch from shooting something close up to something further away. The body construction of this lens, while solid feeling, did result in the outer grip to slightly come loose from the lens body, so while focusing it'll occasionally slip around a tad. And the lens hood is essentially useless, it just rattles around. With luck, I will get a chance to use this in a real portrait shoot in the near future. I suspect it will excel at this. The current pricing of the lens finds between $25 to $50 US on eBay. It is the sort of lens that might show up in a thrift store, antique mall, or other secondhand outlet for a cheaper cost. It is most definitely worth grabbing a copy if you come across it. Rating A-. The only drawbacks to this lens are related to it being a well-worn copy. I'm genuinely surprised in the best possible way by this lens and can give it a hearty recommendation as a budget 135mm lens that is more than worth whatever you end up paying for it.